You're listening to Season 2 of Making the Grade, the podcast exploring what's driving the declining graduation rates between funding rounds and how venture-backed software companies can scale successfully with realistic options to exit. I'm your host, Tom Glasson, CEO of Scalewise, and this season, we're digging into what it really takes to scale beyond early traction, the ups and downs of the journey from 1 to 10 million in ARR, and why so many startups are struggling to make that leap. We're going to explore how to build effective go-to-market functions and hire truly stage-fit talent, how AI is reshaping go-to-market, what changes we can expect to see in 2026, and what capital-efficient scaling actually looks like in practice. All with one core question in mind: how do you build an enduring B2B SaaS business that scales sustainably, stays capital efficient, and creates real exit optionality? Expect honest conversations, hard-won insights, and practical advice you can apply straight away, because scaling can be done differently. Today's guest is someone I've known for well over a decade now and seen at his highest highs and perhaps his lowest lows. Paul Fifield is one of the most experienced go-to-market leaders in the UK tech ecosystem. He's scaled businesses on both sides of the Atlantic. He's worn both the CRO and CEO hats and lived through the highs, the lows, and the moments in between that rarely make the headlines, all while staying brutally honest about his journey and experience. In today's episode, Paul shares the real story behind scaling, from fast growth and predictable revenue to brutal failures, recognizing your ego, cash burn, and the hard lessons that only come from lived experience. We get into what actually breaks companies between 1 and 10 million, why customer renewals can mask deeper problems, and what founders and revenue leaders need to do differently if they want to graduate to the next funding stage. This is one of the most honest conversations we've had on Making the Grade. And if you're navigating the messy middle of 1 to 10 million, there's a huge amount to learn here. Paul, welcome to Making the Grade. How are you today, my friend?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. That was some intro. Thank you very much. I don't know if I'm one of the most experienced in the UK, but anyway, I'll take it.
You definitely are. In my eyes, you are, mate. I've watched your journey over those years, and had a bit of a front row seat at times from, the companies that took off like rockets and the ones that maybe didn't quite go to plan despite showing like huge promise.
Or did take off like rockets and then fell back to earth very quickly.
Fell back to earth again with a bang. But one of the things I think I've always admired is just how openly you talk about those experiences. And you once told me that your career scorecard is kind of 2 failures and 3 successes. So yeah, maybe let us know, how have those failures and successes shaped the way you support startups today? And what are the biggest lessons you carry forward from them?
The first failure was my first company, really. And it was a production company. So nothing to do with tech whatsoever. And we did well. We were quite pioneering. We were doing like short form internet content back in 2003. We worked with a big publisher called EMAP. There was a very, very big lads mag back then called FHM, and we did a lot of very, looking back now, we deemed pretty inappropriate work with them. But I remember we were making like video content for, internet video content, and it was still kind of dial-up. We'd make this content and no one could watch it because there took like a minute to start playing or whatever. And so that production company was great. Google was quite new. So I was like tinkering around with AdWords. And so we got tons of work because I just basically worked out how to use AdWords, and we were just like got loads of leads coming in. So we grew really fast, which is something I seem to be quite good at, growing in a healthy way, maybe debatable as I look back, but I can definitely grow fast. That's definitely like a skill that I definitely can say I've got. And yeah, the agency, the production company grew fast. We did corporates, we did adverts, we ventured into television. We made some of the world's worst television content. We made a show, I don't even know if you know about this, called FHM Bikini Heaven. Like literally one of the worst 90 minutes of television ever made. We filmed it in Miami. It was like a modern Miss World thing. It was a bit random. We managed to sell that into Sky One. We did a co-production with a legends and former celebrity football show, which became the highest rated show on TV, on Channel 5. Boris Johnson was in that. And that's where the famous tackle happened, which went all over the press and it went viral. We then tried to repeat that with a big show with Sky One. We'd never done an outside broadcast on our own before, 18 cameras, HD. We really screwed it up, and we got a letter from Sky One saying we'll never, ever be allowed to make a television for them ever again. Anyway, I could go on. What happened is I just never thought back then I could ever go out of business. I thought, like, only idiots go out of business. Like, And what happened, our cost base grew. We had not one, but two offices on Shaftesbury Avenue. Production companies are really tough on margins. I had to keep feeding the beast. There was no recurring revenue. I wasn't even sure. I didn't even know what recurring revenue was back then. I had this massive cost base that I'd grown. I was the MD of the company. I was 25 or whatever it was. And I remember we did this big change to our website, and suddenly the leads just stopped. We just screwed something up. And it was unbelievable how quick we went from, like, it was never easy. Running the cash flow of a production company is really, really, really hard. But suddenly the leads dropped, and it was very quick then to basically death. And we ran out of money very, very quickly. Our cost base was way too high. Yeah, and we had to bring in the administrators, and we had to, like, put the company to bed, to sleep. It was just awful. It was one of those coming in we had to tell everyone on a Friday afternoon, like, we're really sorry. The company's, like, shutting down. You haven't got jobs to come back to on a Monday. And I was calling round suppliers, telling them that they weren't going to get paid. Like, some of the people that are friends that I've been working with for years, and we worked 5 years in that company. Imagine calling friends who, like, we knew were young families, whatever. We owed them $5,000, $10,000. They've been doing filming work, and I had to say, I'm just so sorry. We're just, there's no money. Like, this is really weird. I feel terrible and devastated, and it was just really, really tough. And so that was failure number one. And the big lesson was, oh my God, cash. I mean, some of these things are going to sound like utterly cliche, right? But when you've actually lived it, it's like, oh my God. And it was basically, I will never, ever in my life ever again run out of cash. Ever. It's absolutely, like, cash is everything. And I think that's probably a lesson that, was learned in the hardest possible way back then. And it's definitely guided how I've approached business going forward from there. And just the critical importance of creating a revenue stream that is essentially sort of repeatable and predictable.
So tell me about the other failure, because there's two on your scorecard. Give me your biggest lessons from that one and how that shaped how you support other startups. I know you support a ton of amazing, fast growth startups now.
Well, that one, you see, here's the thing. That was the last company, as you know. And this industry, startups, can be quite humbling, because you kind of think, I should have been getting better at running companies, not worse. And that one was a brutal one. Sales Impact Academy was a kind of an accident, right, to start with. I wasn't really interested in doing another company. I'd just come out of a fairly brutal experience at uni days, a wildly successful one. And maybe we can talk about some of my successes at some point. But it was a very, very difficult relationship with a very challenging CEO. That's why that was a brutal experience. So, I was just doing some teaching and some classes around go-to-market. And then we got quite a lot of demand. And then I was like, oh, I wonder if you could turn this kind of thing into a subscription model. And it was brilliant content. And the quality of the content was never a problem. And we turned it into a subscription model. And it was, as you know, it was a remote learning platform. In October 2019, we launched as a remote-only learning platform. And then lo and behold, COVID arrives. And we're immediately set up to scale. We helped everyone in those early days when everyone was, like, freaking out and everyone was at home. And we tried to create a bit of a community. And we were like, we opened our doors up for free. We were just very early. And we executed a brilliant go-to-market. It was pretty exceptional. We went from 0 to 1 in our first year, 1 to 5 in our second year. we raised, from my heroes, like, or my hero in Mark Roberge. Here's a guy that I studied this content. He was so game changing, and there he was on my board. I was like, oh my God, this is like absolutely nuts. And the reason it failed, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, it was ego. And number two was the usage of my product. And we'll dig into those two, because I think the first one is never talked about. The second one is perhaps a more obvious one. We'll do the second one first. In a lot of ed tech, people have got to consume lots of content to learn, right? A lot of it is course-led, a lot of it is learning-led. And the problem is, like, humans aren't very good at staying the course with courses. And particularly when you're selling into a sales team, end of the month, end of the quarter, forget it. Like, everyone's focused on actually like trying to hit the number and not get fired. So, we had this spike of activity when we sold to a new customer, and everyone was really excited because you get to learn from Mark Roberge, you get to learn from the top leaders in SaaS in like America and UK. Like, the quality of the people we had. I mean, the problem was that there'd be this spike in usage because people did want to learn. SDRs did want to learn how to get better. AEs did want to get learn some better. Same with like leaders and everything. The problem was the reality is people had very limited time. So you had this very big spike, and then it would literally just go down over time. The crazy thing is we were getting strong renewals, but people were renewing because Mark had this brilliant, if you go to the Stage 2 Capital website called The Science of Scaling, like everybody should read that paper. It's incredible. And one of the core, his core hypothesis is the best way to tell if you got product market fit is that people renew, right? They'll renew after 12 months, assuming you're in a sort of 12-month contract sort of like model. And people were renewing, and not like 20 grand or 5 grand or 10 grand, like renewing 150 grand type, annual ACV contracts. So it was kind of a bit of a head scratcher. I knew there was a problem. I did really nothing about it. And it wasn't that I was being completely reckless, but my strategy was to go raise a massive round, and I'll come on to what happened there in a second, and then fix it with a very strong balance sheet. And so that was work. The reason people were renewing, and this is why it's so important to understand how people are getting value out of your products and making sure that the value that they're getting from the product is the same value you think you're delivering for that product. And this is a great example of a complete disconnect of that. What actually was going on in the 2021, early 22 madness was there was a massive war for talent. People were like, we can't find the talent. We can't find the reps. It was crazy town. Like, you remember it, right? And what actually was going on, and this is actually was Mark Roberge's assessment of it as well, is that essentially Sales Impact Academy became a stamp on the hiring brochure. And that was it. So what companies could then say is, we invest in our teams. And it was all this kind of like, millennials, and we had all the stuff on our decks. Millennials love, they'll stay at your company longer. They'll join your company more, over other companies if you invest in their development, all that stuff. And we had it all over our decks. And that was it. And so these companies could say to people, come join us. Look, we've got the best learning platform in go-to-market in the world, featuring the best leaders from the best companies, including people like, Tom Glasson and blah, blah, blah. And that was it. And so the thought of actually churning that out was like, we just can't do that. It doesn't matter if we're not really using it very much. We just renew it because we can't look like with a company that is, almost burning the books, right? And that was all well and good until the market brutally changed and the water went out and we were butt naked, basically. And that was the thing. So I was in San Francisco, April 22. And I had 3 meetings with Iconic, with Bain Capital, and with SoftBank. And it was like an identical meeting with each one. I mean, these are like tier 1 investors. Because back then, the crazy thing was, if you got to 10 million of ARR really quickly within a couple of years, you're $1 billion company. And we were at 7 and very quick. And this was April. And in September, I was going to be probably about 10. So I sat there, kind of like it was the market, right? It's basically, I was just operating in that environment. So I'd sat down with these meetings and every single meeting was identical. It was bizarre. And I was there with my whole exec team. And I'd be like, so what I'm thinking about, guys, is like holding on till September where I'll hit 10 million of ARR and do the unicorn round. And I even had to say the numbers because I didn't quite believe the numbers. I was like, like 100 million and 900 pre, right? Because I just was like, this is so crazy. And they were like, yeah, Paul, that's right. And I was like, cool. And then they were like, have you considered like 50 million on a 450 pre today? And I was like, I hadn't. Then I was like, in my mind, I was like, I own over 50% of this company. That'd be my net worth would be 250 million. I'll do 20 million as secondary. I'll be a hero at home. I'll be a hero. And we'll come on to the ego in a second. And I was like, that's a lot of money. So I was like, do you know what, guys? Yes, we should do this. And I remember calling Jay at stage 2. I was like, dude, we're going to do this round. It's going to be $500 million. It's amazing. And then literally the warning signs were going on. Interest rates were creeping up. The share prices of these like companies was like starting to kind of come down pretty quick. And then it was just exploded like a week, 2 weeks later. No responses to any of my emails. That was when all of those like emails were going out from VCs going, cut, burn, cut, burn, cut, burn. And it was brutal because people were going shit and they looked straight as their GTM stack. And as you remember back then, everyone had been buying like crazy because it was just growth at all costs. And they bought all this tech that no one was using. And unfortunately, I was in that bucket. And it was like, anyone like using SIA? And they're like, I don't think we've actually logged into that thing for like months. And I was like, cool, that goes. And our churn went mental. I was burning $1 million a month. I had 120 employees and I was running out of cash in November. So I had like 4 or 5 months of runway and then I was dead. And I went into a absolute mental spiral of hell, basically. I won't go into the details of that because it's pretty gory and brutal and horrible. But yeah, I had a complete crash, complete breakdown. And yeah, it was a brutal experience. And luckily enough, the non-exec of the company stepped in, took over because I literally couldn't work anymore. And it wasn't like an instant overnight thing. It was like a sort of over a couple of months of like slow, horrific sort of car crash. And luckily enough, Dan Sumner, who was on the board, who's had probably one of the biggest edtech exits in history, 750 million, that gives you an idea of the sector, if that's the biggest exit. And he took it over and raised money and it lived to fight another day. But yeah, it was a brutal experience. And I think the fundamental learning there is I went for a very high risk strategy, which was raise a lot of capital to solve a very fundamental problem. And what I really, really, really should have done, and in many ways, I'm very glad that happened and I've had the life that I've had since Sales Impact Academy. But, because I would have been trapped with this massive pref stack that I could never clear. And I'd have just been like a zombie company for years and would have been pretty crappy. So in a way, it's very good it didn't happen. But yeah, I took the high risk strategy and it's absolutely critical. There's 2 huge learnings here, right? It's one, and they're very linked. Make sure the value prop, the value creation of your product is aligned to the value that the customers are actually getting from the product. Because if there's disconnect, it can end very, very badly. And monitor usage. You have literally. Ideally, you're mission critical and then you're kind of okay. You don't need to monitor usage because you're just being used every day because you're a mission critical piece of tech. If you're not mission critical, you have to be watching all your metrics like a hawk. And, I think probably AI can help massively with that, but that's absolutely critical because even renewals can mask a deeply troubled company, essentially.
Oh, wow. Paul, there's so much to unpack in that. But firstly, just thank you for sharing that story so openly and honestly. And I think, you really paint a picture of just how impactful the macroeconomic environment can be as well. Because I remember our chance meeting in Mexico in December 2021, and you were at the height there. You were having those discussions with the tier 1 VCs. We were talking about unicorn valuations.
I was being told I was going to be a billionaire.
Yeah. But so quickly that changed. And of course, there's a load of different things that you could have done, and usage and value alignment and all those other things as well, I'm sure would have made a difference. But fundamentally, the macroeconomic environment changed so much, so quickly. And I know how much that had an impact on you as well.
Well, here's the thing about ego. The other thing I was going to touch on. See, I never thought I had a massive ego. and the thing is, like, people conflate, I think, ego with narcissism. And throughout my career, I've had people say, because I'm kind of a nice bloke. I've had loads of people say like, oh, I'm sure you've had very similar feedback, Tom. But like, oh, we love working with you. It's great. I mean, it's brilliant. There's no ego. You haven't got any ego. I'll be like, oh, yeah. So I lap this up. Yeah, okay, no ego. What they were actually saying was, it's great working with you because you're not a narcissistic prick, which we've all met, unfortunately, in our careers, and they're very difficult to work with, and you want to avoid them like the plague. It turns out I had a raging ego. I had a really raging ego. But it's ego is a very sort of insipid thing. But I was carrying a lot of resentment for, people that bullied me at school. I was carrying resentment for the CEO from the previous company who treated me badly. I had a real chip on my shoulder, but not a healthy one. And when I was raising capital, when I was doing my LinkedIn post of like, oh my God, everyone's going to think I'm just so smart and clever and brilliant and blah, blah, blah. And when they were telling me I was going to be a billionaire, I was thinking I was going to be in the Sunday Times top 1,000. That'll show them, those idiots that didn't believe in me. Like, whoa, super unhealthy. And I think ego led me to make some bad decisions. And I don't think we talk about ego enough. And I got my identity got completely wrapped up into the company, and my ego it was fueling my ego. And then obviously when the crash, when all that happened, it was absolutely brutal. I've now since, the recovery from that, the mental recovery from that, I had 6 months out. It was an incredible, it was a gift actually I was given thanks to Dan. And, I wouldn't say I'm egoless now or ego free, but I'm definitely wiser, and I understand much more about all the pitfalls of how your mind works and all that kind of stuff. And that's probably, I brought that a little bit into my coaching as well, but I'm definitely now a much more calmer, wiser, happier individual. And I don't kind of give a shit too much about what people think anymore, which is good.
Well, that's a great outcome. And, I love the personal exploration journey that you went on during that process, and some of the reflections that you had, which you shared with me at the time as well. And I'm sure we could spend the whole episode and many more hours talking about ego and the impact on decisions and business. But I'd love to kind of dive now into a bit more of the tactics and the strategies of scaling, specifically between that kind of 1 to 10 million, because it's a journey I've done myself a couple of times. It can be really exhilarating. And I know that you've done that journey, but you're also supporting lots of other startups and investing in companies that are going on that journey. What would you say are the most underappreciated challenges during that 1 to 10 million journey? What are you seeing?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because it's changing. So I think one of the things that I'm holding on for dear life in many ways, like to the rate of change that's going on in go-to-market right now, all of the AI hyperscalers, that they're doing the same things we've always done, right? They're doing events, they're doing like field marketing, they're doing outreach and B2B and everything, in terms of like they're doing outbound, right? They're doing all the plays, but the playbooks are changing very dramatically. And so I'm very conscious of like not like sounding like an old fart, like from a go-to-market leader from a bygone era, because things are changing really, really sort of rapidly. But there are some absolute fundamentals. So the plays are the plays. The plays will always be the plays. We'll always need to be very, 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 very disciplined on ICP. I keep seeing this. Honestly, it's like, oh my goodness, here we go again. ICP definitions that are just way too wide. There's some other things that I'm seeing, and this this will be on that 1 to 10 journey because you've really hacked your way to 1, right? You've probably done founder-led selling, maybe a couple of reps that are starting to kind of like get, become productive, and you make it to 1. And then maybe at that point you bring in some senior leadership or a revenue leader, roughly speaking, at that sort of 1 to 2 mark. Some of the things, I mean, like fundamentally, I think like, and actually back at SIA, the 5th employee we brought in was Jay doing RevOps, because I knew that actually, like, because I'd had so many experiences in the past of just having my CRM and my data in a complete mess. Now, even more important is to make sure that you've got really highly well-structured data, or you won't be able to take advantage of any of these AI tools whatsoever. You're literally. And to fix these things, as you know, to fix them even at 1 million if you're in a mess can take months and months and months, so costly. I would just say that still, even at seed, even at pre-seed, get your revenue operations into a really good state, or you're going to massively regret it. And that 1 to 10 journey is going to be unbelievably hard and messy. And, if you've got competitors that are well structured and are able to leverage the latest AI tools, you're dead, right? You're going to be left in the dust. So that is fundamental, is strong RevOps and getting your data structured in the right way. The other thing I see, which blows my mind, is, and again, this would definitely happen in that 1 to 10 journey. So ICP definition we talked about. I don't see people doing enough really smart deep dive around the personas that they're selling to, because like everyone's like, oh, and you hear this stupid stuff like outbound doesn't work anymore. It's like, oh my God, if anyone says that again, I'm literally just going to like run really fast at a wall. It's like, of course outbound works. You're just doing it badly, right? And I don't see people doing enough deep persona development, because when you do that, when you choose the 4 personas that are going to be, impactful to your sales cycle, is so revealing, and it creates so many ideas around, okay, this is cool. Like, how do we like, do some messaging specifically to this person that's got a very nuanced version of the problem that you're trying to solve? Let's be smart and actually kind of have nuanced messaging that kind of really speaks to that persona. Because people just go, oh, I've done my recipe, blah, 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 great, and just blast the same message to absolutely everyone, right? So see that. The other one that drives me mad, right, is people that have got a fairly woolly ICP definition, and they go and hire a bunch of SDRs, which I still think are really valuable on the outbound. On the inbound, I love Qualified. I love Piper. I love the inbound. Oh my God, I'm obsessed by it. It's been a problem forever. We'll come on to that in a second. But this thing that I see is like, they're going to hire a bunch of outbound SDRs, and they've got a woolly ICP definition, and then they go, right, you got to build your own lists. I'm like, oh my, do you know what you do? Like you literally you're risking the entire company because you did that, because these 23-year-olds, they don't kind of care that much. They're just learning. They're at the beginning of their career. They're like, okay, I'll find companies a bit like this with whatever tool you've got. I don't know if you've got Clay or whatever it might be. And they build just really crappy lists. And they go after those lists and they fill the entire go-to-market function with total shit, total dross. And it clogs up the reps, it clogs up the AEs. You're winning the wrong companies. They churn a year later. It's a mess. And that happens in that 1 to 10 because you're like, go. And you've got no controls over it. It's just shocking that people would do this. And the most critical thing is, it's really, really important that you hold on to and you give people very curated lists on an incredibly tight ICP definition. And you never let anyone, reps, sales leaders, SDRs, any of them, like you don't. That should be like done in a centralized way, probably by someone in your RevOps team. And you carefully control it. That way, you know that the deals that go into your pipeline are going to be absolutely like spot on ICP. So yeah, that's some of the absolute clangers that I still see.
Oh, mate, you just touched on all of the hot buns for me there as well, because we see that time and time again as well. And it is so frustrating, some of the decisions that get made on that journey, and they're avoidable, right? And I think you touch on a really important point around just how much the playbook has changed, but also just the importance of getting the right sales leadership, the right go-to-market leadership in when you do get to that 1 or 2 million. And that's, I think, where we see a lot of the issues stem from as well. There's just hiring the wrong leader at the wrong time, or the right leader at the wrong time. And obviously with everything that's changed, AI tooling, go-to-market design, playbooks, buying behavior, almost that, how that sales leader or CRO profile, what they need to be doing, or the traits that they need to have, has also changed quite a bit. What competencies do you believe kind of top tier CROs need to have in 2026, given all of these changes that perhaps weren't even that critical 2 or maybe 3 years ago? What do you think is really important for these senior commercial leaders now?
A deep level of comfort with working with tech is absolutely critical. So there's this new emerging role, obviously, that everyone's talked about, which is this GTM engineer. Sometimes I think, like, it's not that far from a RevOps person. I mean, could the RevOps person do that as well? I don't know, mate. It's kind of, they're quite similar for me, but let's say you have a RevOps and you have a GTM engineer. I think having a very strong GTM engineer is really, really important. But I do think the modern CRO needs to be, and it's actually not a strength of mine, so I don't know if I'd do well in this era, but is someone that's really, really comfortable with vibe coding, with spinning things up, with linking bits of tech together. I mean, I was in San Francisco a little while ago, and it was a Saturday evening. This is the geek side of me. I went to a N8N agentic workflow like training workshop on a Saturday evening. Total geekdom. And I was building these agentic workflows using Appify, which is like a scraping tool. And so, scraping LinkedIn, bringing it into an agentic workflow and doing some really cool things with it. You need to be that. You need to get your hands dirty. You need to be like, you need to be learning how these things work. You need to be really rapidly wrapping your heads around how you train agents, right? Like, it's not like this isn't a silver bullet. You got to treat them like an employee, right? And you got to train them. And if you put the time and the effort in, you can do amazing things right now with AI, and you can build revenue functions in extreme efficiency. Potentially, get to 10 million, not like with, 10 reps or 8 reps that you used to need, on hopefully getting to somewhere between 600K and $1 million or pounds a year. But actually, with the right tooling and the right efficiencies, reps can be doing, significantly more output now. And so I think really this new era, that people that are very, very comfortable with data, with systems, with hacking things together, with trialing things themselves, and being so super curious and open to learning, and then expecting that in their team and their reps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think the modern CRO needs to be exploring, trialing, experimenting. How much hands-on keyboard do you think they should be, though? Because you talked about them actually vibe coding. How much of that should sit with them versus, their RevOps or their go-to-market engineer? And importantly, how should they straddle kind of strategy and tactics? Because the CRO role is a senior C-suite leader. So give me a sense as to kind of like, how to straddle that, but also when you think it makes most sense for a CRO to actually come into a business, because that often then dictates how hands-on keyboard they might be as well.
Well, that was the point I was going to make, because I think really from your sort of 1 to 10, that's a really strong VP of sales. And I think probably CRO really should be coming in at like probably 10 plus. And where there's you're being sucked into a lot more C-level activities. You're doing your quarterly offsites. You're doing your Monday meetings, which last bloody half a day. And, you're starting to spend more time with team one, which is the exec team, than your own team. And that's where people really struggle to scale. Because going from VP sales, which is, you're in the revenue bubble, your peers, you might work with your marketing, but you don't really work with that many other functions really, a bit, but you're in your bubble, you're with your team, or you're with your reps, you're on deal calls, you're very in the weeds. And one of the things I help a lot of people with is like scaling from that to being a CRO. It's a big leap, and not many people make that leap because they don't build enough highly skilled people in their direct reporting line. So, but anyway, that's probably a completely different topic. Probably, yes, CRO is 10 million plus, broadly speaking, and your VP of sales will get you from here to there. In terms of how much you should be doing, I think, Tom, at the moment, things are changing so fast and so dynamically. If you're not engaging and doing this stuff yourself, I think you really, really should. Maybe in 5 years' time, when things have settled down maybe a bit and things are just, the new metrics are emerging. Reps can do 5 million, mid-market reps can suddenly do 5 million a year or whatever, and not one, because of all of the tooling and everything else around you, and things settle down and maybe some tools emerge as like the leading tools, and everyone's not like we're just in this period of such change. I just think it's a dereliction of duty no matter how senior you are, it's dereliction of duty not to be like rolling the sleeves up and learning firsthand.
Oh, well, there's so much truth in what you said there, Paul, and in particular, when a CRO should be coming in, because I think one of our biggest, I suppose, pushbacks when clients come to us saying they need a CRO and they're at like 1 million or 2 million is, no, you absolutely don't. You need a good sales leader that, that can really be in the trenches with those reps, define the playbook, put in the kind of foundations of what a good repeatable sales process looks like.
Oh, it just gets a bit boring sometimes.
It is so boring.
Over and over again.
In fact, I was with a VC this week who was still pushing for a founder, a CEO, to hire a CRO at 2 million. And I'm like, no, this is bonkers. Maybe a fractional CRO for sure, like to provide air cover and that strategic support to what could be a relatively junior sales leader. But I think those go-to-market hiring choices can either make or break a company in those early stages. How do you advise founders that are thinking about sequencing of hires? And I'm not just talking about kind of, revenue leader hires, but how do you think about like sequencing of hires on that kind of 1 to 10? And I appreciate a lot has changed and some companies are going from 1 to 10 incredibly quickly now. But what advice would you give to founders that are kind of thinking about how they should be scaling that go-to-market org in those early days?
Well, I'll go through it rapidly. We talked about RevOps super early. And just to be clear, that wasn't full time. Jay was doing a day a week, right? So as you well know, I love fractionals. I love getting fractional help in where you need it, but you don't need it full time. So RevOps mega early, founder-led selling. Every founder's got to do it. I don't care. I've got this great question. Which always flummoxes a little bit like tech founders. They're like, I'm not very good at selling. I can't sell. I've been told I'm crap at selling. I had this call yesterday with someone. I was like, how much money have you raised? 2 million? Oh, so you're pretty good at selling equity. That's pretty good. Well done. And 2 million's a lot. And they were like, oh yeah, I suppose so. I'm like, yeah, of course you can fucking sell. So founder-led selling, don't hire straight away. Do the graft, learn the processes, understand how you do the messaging, all that kind of stuff. Then once you got some traction, let's say a couple of $100,000, I think the first hire is a CS rep. You want a bunch of customers, and then a lot of people just ignore them. Just focus on winning more. And you're like, well, there's loads of great case studies there. There's probably some disheartened customers because your product's so young. It's just, there's nothing there. Like, actually, those early CS people, they all actually paper over the cracks. The classic one is there's no reporting yet in the platform. So the CS is doing the hacking it all together and sending a PDF, whatever it might be. But I was like, don't lose them because, oh, by the way, because when you want to raise again, if your churn's horrendous, that could be terminal. So get someone in. I know that CS is moving very fast in terms of its role as well with tech, but like at the early stage, you can't do anything with AI. Like, please, everyone, you can't just get an AI when you haven't got anything worked out and hope that AI is going to work. The AI only follows and copies like what you've learned to do as a human, and then it amplifies it and is on a crazy scale. Like, but you need to learn how to do it first. The AI is not going to be able to do that. Maybe super intelligence in 5 years might be able to do that, but like not right now. It's like crazy. Everybody forever, ever and ever is always looking for the silver bullet in GTM. It's like, it doesn't exist. Maybe super intelligence to change that, but right, it doesn't exist. Do the work. Anyway, CS, right. Now you got that. And I'm not saying you have to do this all, so you can parallel these things, but CS, great. Work very closely with the CEO on giving that CEO leverage to give those clients a lot of the white glove service and learn a lot and understand the value proposition, how they're using it, make sure the value's aligned, all the stuff, case studies, blah, blah, blah. Relationships, because things are going to go wrong and you don't want to lose them. I do think at this point, particularly for product or technical like CEOs, it is bonkers to get them to expect them to suddenly go out and hire some great SDRs and some great AEs. They've never done it before. It's as stupid as a commercial CEO like me, like going and building an engineering team. It would be awful. I don't even know like where I'd start. I'd start with ChatGPT probably, and it'd be awful. Of course, I'd build one of the world's worst engineering teams. I've never done it before. So at this stage, I love getting in like a fractional VP of sales who can, maybe a couple of days a week, work very closely with the CEO and start to build probably a couple of SDRs, a couple of AEs. If you've got the budget to do it, always hire in twos, which is much more preferable. And just Google it if you don't believe me. And that's how I would start to sequence it. Get the fractional in, couple of. I'm talking about also. I should qualify this. I'm talking in my mind always about a sort of a mid-market like motion, right, of around 10 to 70 grand, ACV. And don't forget, one of the biggest SaaS companies in the world right now is OpenAI. Everyone talks about like SaaS as it's SaaS as it's dead. It's called subscription. Software as a service on subscription. I think I pay a subscription to OpenAI every month. I think probably you'd argue they're a modern AI SaaS company, wouldn't you? Anyway, yeah. So I'm talking about a mid-market motion, and it's probably still a couple of SDRs to do outbound, a couple of AEs, and probably thinking about a growth marketer, a demand gen growth marketing sort of role as well to start stimulating inbound, and then spin up an inbound avatar to deal with the inbound from qualified. I love them. It's just amazing. I'm in a conversation with a very human-like experience. I get qualified, and if I'm a high value a prospect, routed through to like the right sales rep. You can even get so sophisticated that you can route it through to the highest performing rep or the rep so all this round robin stuff, gone. That was so old fashioned. Now you can actually do dynamic systems where you go, actually, I'm going to reward good reps with great leads. And it creates this snowball because the AI is actually deciding where the lead should go. Those inbound avatars changing the game.
Amazing. Paul, we could talk for hours on this stuff. I know we could. We asked this question to everyone to wrap up the show. So hopefully you can just give us your thoughts on this. So season 2 of Making the Grade is all about that kind of 1 to 2 million to 10 million journey. And that graduation rate between Series A and B, which has been declining over recent years. What do you think needs to happen to improve the graduation rate from Series A to B? What would the kind of big things that you advise companies that have just raised a Series A to do to increase their chances of getting to Series B?
It's all the basics, right? If you got to A, you've definitely got some product market fit, but it's then the execution. Like you're in execution mode now, and don't fall out of product market fit. Stay very, very close to customers, very, very, very close. Like CEOs should be probably talking to 3 or 4 customers a week, always, forever and ever and ever. Make sure that you're not, you're maintaining and growing and the stickiness and the product market fit. But then it's just all about execution. All the things we just talked about today, you just got to get right and get fractional help in to help you to sort of de-risk that journey. Or hire me as a coach, but I haven't got much time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you, Paul, for mentioning the importance of fractional. We know you're a big supporter of it, as are we. And just thank you for just being so brilliant on the show today. I knew it would be an amazing discussion. We've known each other for quite a while now. Every time we talk, I'm reminded why your honesty, your scar tissue and your experience are so valuable to everyone in the ecosystem. So thank you for just being so open today. And thank you, for the friendship over the years and your support of Scalewise. We really do appreciate it. I'm glad we got you onto the show. Here's to many more conversations.
All right. Also massively value our friendship, Tom. Thank you.
Awesome, mate. Take care. Thanks, buddy.
See you later, mate. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Making the Grade. If today's episode gave you something to think about or perhaps something you're going to act on, we'd love to hear from you. Please can you share any feedback, questions or guest recommendations by emailing us at podcast@scalewise.com. And if you're enjoying Making the Grade, please do consider leaving us a review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Reviews make a huge difference in helping the show reach more founders and operators navigating this stage of growth. You'll find links, resources, and key takeaways from today's episode in the show notes, plus even more exclusive podcast content on our YouTube channel. Thanks again for listening, and see you soon for another episode of Making the Grade.